Creativity is something that we often look at as personal. You might look at somebody and say, oh, that person's really creative. Or you could say, I am not creative. But what if creativity did not only reside and live inside of us? Today I wanted to talk about, where does creativity exist? Who gets to decide what counts? And how has social media and the algorithm changed the game? Introducing Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, and I really hope I got the name right. Csikszentmihalyi is a psychologist, and he's known for the flow theory as well as the systems view of creativity. In his book Creativity, he really poses the question, where is creativity located? So according to Csikszentmihalyi, creativity exists in three parts. You have the individual, who is the maker, the one who brings the skill, the intuition, as well as the discipline. Then you also have the domain being the culture. And this is where you find things like the music, the actual language, it could be the genre, and all the things in which the rules actually exist. Then next you have the field. And the field would be what would be considered as gatekeepers. This would be the critics, the publishers, think of the media, the schools, and the institutions. Creativity is what happens between the three of these parts. This is kind of where, for some people, it doesn't necessarily land, because you might think, well, I'm personally creative, or I know somebody who has a lot of creativity. I use creativity at my job. Well, of course. Definitely, according to Csikszentmihalyi, is that everybody does have their own personal element of creativity. But personal creativity does not equal cultural creativity. So in order to achieve cultural creativity, it has to be recognized by the field and then passed into the domain, otherwise known as the culture. So what comes first, really? The field, the domain? Well, that's where it gets a little bit tricky, because in traditional models, you would have the individual and then you would have the domain, but right here in the middle would be the field. And in order for the individual to get to the domain, you'd have to go through the field. What this meant was that it was the institutions that decided what gets into culture. Perfect example would be within the fashion industry. It used to be the high fashion houses that would determine what was going to be passed in the culture. What would this mean? If your work was not recognized by the field, it may exist, but it just might not be culturally relevant. Which really does explain why many talented individuals may be pushed to the side and even excluded. And it also explains why, for many people, the recognition came way after, and for some, never at all, or maybe after they died. But something interesting happens. In comes social media. And social media shifted the order in which the individual was inserted into the culture. So the order that we currently see is often individual, culture, and then the field. So the individual has direct access to the culture, and depending on which way it influences the culture, then it enters into the field that usually pushes it out even to further mainstream culture. And this is because creators are the ones that are able to publish directly. They're able to shape the culture and also build their own audiences. In this instance, the culture actually responds first, and then the institutions are the ones that now follow, which means that these institutions aren't necessarily as authoritative. They are more in a position to respond. Here's where things start to get a little more interesting. Here comes the algorithm. The algorithm is now what functions as a field, because it decides what gets passed, what gets distributed, as well as what disappears. So just like a field, the algorithm is now what filters creativity. It rewards certain forms and it also creates a new norm. But unlike traditional fields, it's non-human, it's unaccountable, as well as it rewards attention rather than meaning. The algorithm is now the silent gatekeeper. Not all creativity needs to have cultural impact. There are actually four types of creativity, and this is what's known as the 4 C's of creativity. So, the first C would be the mini C. The mini C would be the individual who does it for therapeutic reasons, maybe for healing, maybe it's just as a reflection, and it's something that might be a little bit more personal. The next would be little c. Little c creativity is your everyday creativity. And maybe it's something that you share with your friends and the people around you. And they know that you're really a good artist and you really have fun with it, or somehow you really love to help others with it. Then the next up, we have the Pro C. A lot of well-known artists exist in this area because it is professional, it's something that you share, it's something that you teach, and it's actually very recognized in the field. However, it may not necessarily fall into the next category, which is the Big C creativity. Big C creativity is extreme cultural impact and somehow has been able to shift the culture. Think of Picasso, think of Michael Jackson and Prince. These are people who have reached a very rare form of cultural creativity. For many people, this level of creativity is not really always desirable, but it's an ideal. My takeaway from this is creativity, it doesn't disappear even if it's not recognized. It just circulates in a different way. In therapeutic, spiritual, and community spaces, who needs to worry about permission? But understanding the system actually can help us because it helps us to create more consciously. It also allows us to understand that there can be harmful gatekeeping. Also, it helps us to protect creativity that may not be algorithm friendly. Creativity begins in all of us. Culture decides what's remembered, and we decide where to place our value. Until next time.